Hey everyone, my name is Alex and welcome back to my channel, or if this is your first time here, welcome. Stay a while. We're going to be talking about ghosts and haunted stuff and a lot of trauma. Yeah, we're going to keep that in. So we went on a big family vacation. My parents, my brother, his fiance, and my boyfriend all went on a family vacation together this June of this year. It was only a couple months ago. And this is the first time that we have all been on vacation together. But this was the first time even my parents, my brother, and I have been on a vacation together since, I believe, 2012 when we went to Virginia Beach and we went to the Cavalier Hotel. So it's been a hot minute and we were super excited to spend a week-long vacation together, chill, do a lot of tours and more tours and more tours and more tours. My dad asked us what we all wanted to go see so he could organize what days were available, what tickets we could get. He could literally be a travel agent if he really wanted to be. He is super organized and told us what days we could do what. So on the very last day of the trip, we drove to Franklin, Tennessee to not just take one tour, not two tours, but we took 3 tours in Franklin, Tennessee, spent all day there learning about the Battle of Franklin. Actually, when my parents and I were in Nashville, I believe in 2014, we were not there with my brother. I think he was like a camp counselor or something, I'm not sure. So we actually did a tour in Franklin, and we were actually at the Carnton Mansion. I believe I'm pronouncing that right. I'm sorry if I'm butchering any name. But to be honest, I didn't really remember the tour. It was quite literally 10 years ago. But I just had... But visiting Franklin, I highly recommend. I mean, if you have all day to listen to literally the same story about the Battle of Franklin 3 times, but from 3 different perspectives of these historic homes, it is very interesting. It's very sad. It's just fascinating is the best way I think I would describe it. Fascinating to hear about history and to hear it from their version, to be in their home and to understand just how the hell they survived this. Well, most of them. But yeah, here we go. Also, to preface, I'm not a Civil War buff. I'm not a historian. I did a lot of research from verified websites. I will leave them all in the description below. I will try my best to describe as accurately as possible what happened in the battle, because I think that's very important to discuss, but also discussing the family's backgrounds in each of the houses, what happened during the battle, and the aftermath, the afterlife. We started our tour in Franklin, Tennessee at the Lotz House, so let's begin talking about the family members and get to know them before the tragedy of the Franklin battle. Born in 1820, Johann Albert Lotz was a trained master of woodwork from Saxony, Germany. He came over to the United States because other family members had moved across the seas. He arrived in New Orleans in 1848 and shortly after met his wife, Margaretha. I think I'm pronouncing it, is it Margareta or Margaretha? I'm not sure. In 1855, he purchased 5 acres of land from the Fountain Branch Carter in Franklin, Tennessee, and spent the next 3 years building his home. Honk honk. One cool thing to note is that no slaves built this home. Yay! This is really rare for the time, so yay! It was all built by Mr. Lotz himself. He actually did not believe in the practice of slavery. Super rare for the time, especially in Tennessee. The man who sold him the land, Mr. Carter, actually had a house across the street from him, so they were neighbors. And we will talk about the Carter's family in the future. Unfortunately, Mr. Lotz had no way of knowing that his home would be the center of the Franklin battle. So a little bit about his house. The house is a 2-story, 4-column Greek Revival white frame building. Mr. Lotz was a master carpenter, piano maker, fancy, repaired guitars and violins. He turned his own home into a show home to demonstrate his skills to potential customers. Thinking smart business. He would take them on a tour of his own home to show off different styles and levels of detail. He had 3 fireplaces that ranged from simple to intricate to way more intricate design, and they were all carved out of different types of wood. One impressive feature of the home is a free-floating black walnut handrail and a cantilevered staircase. So this is like the mid-1800s, remember this, right? And it's just him doing this by himself. You have a cantilevered staircase that you designed and built in your home. Like, do you not know how impressive that is? amazing. At the bottom of the stairs, there is an upside down leg from one of Mr. Lotz's pianos. Not only did he build his home, he also built furniture and cabinetry. All the hand-carved millwork pieces were carved by Mr. Lotz himself. Like, this is passion. That is so much care to detail, and they don't build them like this at all anymore. Trust me, I'm an interior designer. Margaretha had 6 children, Paul and Amelia from a former marriage, Augustus, Matilda, and the twins, Julius and Julia. So Matilda was only 6 years old during the Battle of Franklin. Unfortunately, there's no information about Margaretha. I literally could not find anything about her life, and the only child that would make a huge impact on history would be 6-year-old Matilda, and we will talk about her after. There's a mustache. There's a mustache. Yes. Why? Thank you. No. No. It's dead. I didn't even get to use it, but I got a cool mustache. Let's specifically get into the Battle of Franklin itself before we dive into what happened to the families, how do they survive this, what happened afterwards, so much. So let's talk about the battle itself so you understand how fucking scary this would have been for these families individually. So the Civil War was actually starting to lead toward the end. At the time, though, the Battle of Franklin, they did not even know when this was going to be over, but because the Battle of Franklin happened, this was the beginning of the end of the Civil War. So after the fall of Atlanta on September 1st, 1864, General John Bell Hood, who was a Confederate, and his 30,000 manned army raced to Tennessee, hoping to divert Major General William T. Sherman's attention by threatening his supply base at Nashville. It did not work, however. Instead, Sherman dispatched Major General John Schofield's army of Ohio, which is where I'm from, which his army was about 30,000 strong as well. This is all crazy because we didn't really learn too much about this battle specifically in school, but like a lot of the men were from the Midwest, a lot of people from Ohio, which is just crazy. Major General George Thomas, who was the North, had about 25,000 in Nashville already to protect Nashville. Sherman's army, Union, left the supply line behind and went to the Atlantic coast, forcibly securing whatever they needed to sustain themselves from the Confederate citizens in their path. So if Schofield could reach them before Hood, he could have a bigger advantage on the battlefield. Hood was hoping to defeat Schofield before the two forces joined. So one interesting fact about Hood and Schofield is that they used to be classmates, and now they're both gonna fight each other because Hood decided he wanted to. On November 28th, Hood managed to divide Schofield's army and surround a portion of it in Columbia, Tennessee. Luckily, there was a miscommunication and confusion in the Confederates, resulting in the escape of Schofield's men. These couple of battles, I'm just going to say, I'm going to hardcore make fun of the Confederates because, like, this is just bad. Like, Hood was bad. If you're offended by that, good, because this would become known as the Battle of Spring Hill, which was just a total failure by the Confederates. Schofield then withdraws his men to Franklin because nothing really happened in Spring Hill, and they're like, all right, we're gonna keep going. This pissed off Hood, and you cannot hurt a man's ego, especially this one, but don't worry. We know how everything ends. The Civil War, they lost the Civil War, So Hood was determined to fight them again, and they headed to Franklin for one more chance to attack the Union before they reached Nashville. One issue with Franklin is that they didn't have the same possibilities as Spring Hill. Instead of surrounding the Union army like they did in Spring Hill, the Confederates created a frontal assault over 2 miles of open ground against an equally sized Union army entrenched behind 3 lines of breastwork and abatis. I had to look up how to say this word. So I had to Google what this meant because I don't know. Breastwork is a thick, dry-laid stone wall that stands about breast high. Abatis means a line of felled trees with their branches sharpened and tangled together and facing towards the enemy. Like, they were ready. So Hood actually ignored his lieutenant's objections. They were actually like, hey, maybe this isn't such a good idea because they're like really prepared and like really actually ready to fight, and we're just like standing 2 miles in a line with nothing, and you're charging at them. They are ready. But Hood's like, no, go. On the night of November 29th, 1864, around 25,000 Northern soldiers arrived in Franklin, Tennessee from Spring Hill. The troops completely took over the town. Completely. They quickly began digging trenches south of the Lotz House and waited for the attack from the south. The Lotz family woke up very early in the morning on November 30th to troops outside of their home. The soldiers told them that they could either stay or they could leave, but the battle was on their way straight to their town. Mr. Lotz feared that his wooden house would not survive the battle and was scared for the safety of his family, especially his children. So they sought refuge 110 steps across the street to the Carter house. Their family, along with 20 other people, hid in the basement/cellar for 17 hours while the battle raged around them, and they survived. The battle itself only lasted about 5 or 6 hours. It was such a quick and brutal battle. This is where I would have my whiteboard, but unfortunately I only have that one marker and it was dried. Thanks, Amazon. So I'm going to either draw something or find like a legit battle scene, and here it is. I'm so sorry, future me. So November 30th, the 2-mile Confederate line stepped off around 4 p.m. This is also in November, so the sun set at 5 p.m. And I don't know if you know, back in the day, there weren't really like street lights and shit. Like it was pitch black. The Confederate sweeps forward and quickly overlaps and overwhelms the 2 brigades of Brigadier General George Wagner's division, which holds a position half a mile in front of the main line. I don't know, I wrote this in my notes. I don't know why, but in my head this looks like a really fucked up Red Rover sends somebody over. So the Confederate charged, and the men in the middle of the line were able to slip their way through. They were actually able to make a pretty good distance because the men on the main line, the Union side, did not want to accidentally shoot their fellow soldiers while trying to hit the Confederates that were running towards them. Because of this, the Confederates slammed hard into the defenders around the Carter house. Thousands of men surged into a deadly combat with shovels, bayonets, sabers, and pistols in the Carter Gardens. Some historians have said that the fighting was some of the most severe hand-to-hand fighting during the 4-year-long war. There were at least 10,000 Americans who were unalived or injured or missing. The Union line would have broken completely if it wasn't for Colonel Emerson Opdyke of Wagner's division, who actually disobeyed orders to join the first exposed line, but instead sent men 200 yards behind the Carter's house. He sends men forward into the breach and prevents a full-scale disaster. So this could have gotten even worse. So Major General Nathan Bedford Forrest, who's a Confederate, forces a crossing of the Harpeth River at Hughes Ford and threatens to turn the Union left flank. Union's cavalry commander, Brigadier General James Wilson, reacts quickly and sends his horsemen to the ford to confront the Confederates. After a brief dismounted firefight, Wilson's troops charge, covered by a hail of repeating rifle fire. Even though Forrest's men outnumbered Wilson's, they were outgunned by the 7-shot Spencers, which is repeating rifles and carbines. I don't know what that means. The Confederates then withdraw back across the Harpeth River. On the opposite bank of the river, the Confederate soldiers of General A.P. Stewart's crash against the western portion of the main line. Swept by musketry and artillery, they pressed on until they reached a tall abatis of Osage orange timber. They get to an abatis. Details matter. They don't have any other choice but to try to climb and crack their way through. Remember, these branches are sharpened and very dangerous, so Union soldiers would later write about the nightmare vision of tangled bodies, twisted and contorted, stuck in the abatis. The Confederates retreat, reform, and renew once again the attack as many as 6 times, but cannot break the Union defenders. Different sources say different times, so I believe around 6 or 7 p.m., the attack on the right stalls, and the hand-to-hand combat in the center is just raging into like the 3rd hour of the battle. Hood sends his left wing. The men of General Benjamin Cheatham's advance by torchlight and quickly becoming separated and disorganized because it is pitch black. So they can't see, they're by torchlight. They all become quickly separated, disorganized, confused. They can't find anything. They stumble within range of the Union and met flashes from their muskets. The dwindling Confederates reach a small locust grove less than 50 yards from the breakworks before they withdraw. The Confederates had such severe losses and little damage done to the Union. The Confederates also in the center would also fall back, leaving thousands of unalive and wounded in 2 acres of the Carter Gardens. As the pressure eases, Schofield withdraws his army to then again head to Nashville. So I know that was a lot and that was very detailed, but basically here's what happened. So the red is the Confederate and how many times they tried to break the lines, but the Union was super prepared. They were ready for this battle. They had many layers of protection and they could not break their way through because the Union had just prepared for so long. I really don't know why the Confederates didn't try to surround them. I don't know if they could at that point anymore, but literally like the night before, they literally could have done so much damage, but there was just terrible communication. Communication is key. If you don't have good communication, you're not going to work as a team. And this is just evidence of how poor the Confederates did in these couple of battles. Just especially under Hood. I don't know about the other battles or anything like that. They lost this battle. Again, 2 battles in a row. Lost. So here's the aftermath, which is just very sad no matter what side. Estimated deaths are around 8,500 men. The Union side specifically, maybe around 189 were unalived, 1,033 were wounded, 1,104 missing or captured. The Confederates had 1,750 unalived, 3,800 wounded, 702 missing and captured. 14 Southern commanders had become casualties. 14. More than any other battle in the war. Even with all the horrible damage, Hood still, his ego is like up. You lost 2 battles back to back. He still tries to pursue Schofield and tries again to fight at the Battle of Nashville, which you can read in your own free time. So the family steps outside after 17 hours of hiding in their basement/cellar to witness a horrific scene. Horrific. Huge trigger warning if you do not want to hear about details. I will give you a time to skip forward if you don't want to hear about this. But like this, like I just couldn't even I could not even imagine like how horrible this would have been. Mounds standing 6 feet tall of deceased bodies were all over their yards and the street. Dead horses everywhere. And like horses aren't small, they're big. Everywhere. Houses in the area were quickly, if not already, turned into hospitals. The Lotz House served as a hospital until the next following summer. Also, if you want to get mad at the government some more, the government did not send people to help clean up the bodies. No one helped at all. So no one came to help clean up except for the remaining townsfolk. But also remember, the only people that were still in the town were mostly children, women, or elderly people or older people that could not serve in the war. the children just having to see that. So we'll talk about that later. So the Lotz house was very badly damaged as expected, but Mr. Lotz went straight away to work to repair his home. Most of the southern wall of the home had been blasted away, and you can actually see old bloodstains still in the original wood floors. You can see the replaced wood on the second floor where cannonballs had rained in from the roof, and you can actually see a dent where one of the cannonballs rested, and that's on the first floor. And it's all original wood floorings except for that replaced patch. Even though Mr. Lotz was a craftsman, he had to make quick repairs for his family just to survive. When the Union came in like the night before, they literally took over everything and just made it their own. They unalived livestock, they took over barns, they used any resources that they could, taking away people's livelihoods, their farms, their animals, everything. They took everything because they had to. The citizens of the town tried to get money back from the government to try to fix their homes because they didn't ask for this. They did not. They did not sign up to be in the war. And you have children, you have mothers, you have older people who can't serve. They didn't ask for this. Like, they literally can't serve at all. So why are they suffering the consequences? And the government said no. No. So they never received a cent. They didn't receive anything at all. So this is why a lot of these damages and blood-stained floors are still there today, because they didn't have the money, they didn't have the resources, so they couldn't replace their wood floors after they tried to save as many lives as they possibly could, bleeding out in front of fireplaces, which was the most commonplace, and just amputations and a whole bunch of just makeshift surgeries. Mr. Lotz is a master craftsman. Of course, he would have done a proper replacement of the floors upstairs. You can see this patch in the wood floor that he did, I believe, in their master bedroom, I believe. And also, I believe in the children's room as well. Don't quote me on that. But you can see dents from the hammer. Now, this man is a master craftsman. He would have taken this, he would have repaired this with love and care, but just, you can see the rage and just the sadness and the emotion. He didn't ask for this. He didn't want to put his kids in any danger. He literally didn't even believe in the act of slavery. He did not want any of this. And now he's forced to quickly repair his home in any way possible that he can. And you see dents from the hammer, and just did what he could. And it doesn't get better. I'm so sorry. Unfortunately, the Lotz had to abandon their home in 1869 and flee because the Lotz built a piano with the inscription on it that the KKK found disrespectful to the Confederacy. And these people still exist today. When he made this piano, the Confederates had already lost the war. The war was over. The Confederates lost the Civil War. So they were offended by this. Can you imagine that? Also to the fact that Mr. Lotz did not believe in the practice of slavery, so the KKK intended to tar and feather him in his own front yard. So Mr. Lotz sold his home very quickly with the piano in it for next to nothing and got a cover wagon and set out to California with his family. We're going to fast forward 100 years. The Heritage Foundation learned of the plans of this historic home and stepped in to purchase it for $25,000. The previous owners used the home for a cooking school, law offices, many retail businesses. At one point, it was actually turned into apartments. By 1974, it was set for demolition, but luckily it was saved until 1991, when it was about to become a Mexican restaurant. I don't know why. So J.T. Thompson stepped in and truly saved the home. He loved the home like no one else did, and turned the home into a museum to tell the story of the Lotz family and the Civil War. It's once again a showcase of American-made 19th century antiques and original Lotz handmade furniture, and has been called one of the finest privately owned collections in the country. So, quick history about Matilda Lotz, because this is the only other family member that we know about. Matilda turned 6 years old on November 29th, 1864, one day before the battle. Ever since she could draw, she would be scribbling line drawings in the dirt. She would draw household animals, farm animals. On rare occasions, she would have access to scrap paper, which that's kind of sad. She would usually get a small piece of coal from the fireplace and draw childish figures on the paper. There was a time that she attempted to draw on a vacant wall, but her parents put a stop to that very quickly. We can only imagine how devastating the battle must have been for a 6-year-old child, but honestly, they were just so happy to be alive. After the Lotz family settled in San Jose, California, Matilda received her first art lesson from her older brother Paul and other artists employed locally by Wright's Photography Gallery. In 1874, she began a 6-year course under Virgil Williams at the School of Design in San Francisco. While attending the school, she won several gold medals and graduated with high honors. She continued her studies in Paris, France under Felix Barrias and Van Markey. She received an honorable mention of her work displayed at the Paris Salon and awarded 2 gold medals by the Paris Academy of Painting, and she was actually the first woman to ever be honored by the Academy. She traveled all over Europe and Egypt as a single and unchaperoned woman. Scandalous. She was frequently commissioned to paint portraits of royal families throughout Europe. Many of her pieces are actually hanging in the original Lotz home, as well as one portrait of the former California governor Leland Stanford, who founded Stanford University, and it's still on display at Stanford. There's so much more history about her, and you can please research that all in your free time. She is a beautiful painter, and just seeing her work in person, it's so beautiful, and she just never stopped her passion, and I'm very happy for her. She's super talented, and she's just so creative. It's just beautiful pieces. She definitely had a very unique life, and she did pass away in Tata, Hungary. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, but Tata, Hungary, February 21st, 1923. Next, we are going to be talking about the Carter family. So the Carter family is across the street from the Lotz House, 110 steps away. And since you know the whole entire battle, I will share the family's history and their personal experience during the battle. In 1930, Fountain Branch Carter built a home about a mile west of the Carnton Plantation, which we will talk about that next. Carter was a very successful farmer, merchant, surveyor, and operator of a cotton gin. Yes, they had slaves. His wife's name is Mary, and they had 12 children together. 8 of them made it into adulthood. So 3 of his sons joined the Confederate Army when the war started. On November 30th, the Union soldiers were prepping the town for the battle. Federal Brigadier General Jacob D. Cox set up his headquarters at the Carter House, waking up the family bright and early. While the battle was going on, residents of the Carter Plantation and the house remained inside, and they were absolutely terrified. At the Carter House, 23 people, who were mostly children, including the Lotz family, remained in the cellar throughout the battle. They could hear everything going on, including soldiers desperately trying to beat their way into the home. A really weird, sad coincidence. One of the casualties was Todd Carter, which was one of Carter's sons. So Todd had survived 2.5 years of fighting in the Civil War, only to be shot 9 times in the battle that was fought in his own backyard. Quick side note, there's a lot that happens with Todd in the Civil War. It's very interesting. It is quite long. Please go on the tour or research it just a little bit. There's just so much that happens to him, and just like all of that happening to just end up literally in his own backyard fighting this dumb battle that did not even need to happen. The Carters found his body and helped carry him inside of the home. So he passed away 2 days later from his injuries in the room across the hall from where he was born, which is just like, that one's just like that's just emotional and just so fucking heartbreaking. Ooh, okay. Are we good? Okay. The Carter House and the plantation were also turned into hospitals for several days. There are still bloodstains, bullet holes, cannonball holes all over the property to this day. So we're going to kind of slightly address the elephant in the room. What did they do with the bodies? We're going to kind of talk about that right now. Immediately following the battle, the surviving Confederate soldiers tried to identify as many people as they could before they were hastily buried in shallow graves. There were thousands of people. Thousands. Shallow graves. Keep that in mind. They were so quick because they had to advance to Nashville shortly after. After the war, the bodies of the Union soldiers were moved to Stone River's National Cemetery. However, the government would not expense the moving of the Confederate deceased. So the citizens moved the remains themselves, again, traumatizing as fuck, into a 2-acre plot of land that was donated by the McGavics. Next, we are going to be going into the last and final location, which is the Carnton Plantation. The Carnton Plantation was built in 1826 by former Nashville Mayor Randall McGavick. It's a red brick, federal-style, 11-room residence built by slave labor. The first construction at Carnton was a smokehouse in 1815, which was adjoined to the main house in 1826. The mansion sat on 1,400 acres, which 500 of the acres was used for farming. They grew wheat, corn, oats, hay, and potatoes. They also raised and bred livestock and thoroughbred horses. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of people, and I'm going to have their names. There's a couple of different ownerships, and a lot happens. A lot happens in this mansion. Former Nashville Mayor Randall McGavick was the owner. He had a daughter, Elizabeth, who married William Giles Harding of the Belmead Plantation that became an international renowned thoroughbred farm. So actually, 10 years ago, we went to the Belmead Plantation, which they have amazing wine. I just go for the winery. The history is not super fun because slaves, but they have a wonderful winery. If you want a suggestion from me, this is my most favorite wine ever in the world. The blackberry wine. I think it's about $25 per bottle. I was 20 when I was at their wine tasting, and they wouldn't let you if you were like under 21. So my mom, we were sipping wine, trying the wine, stuff like that. We're doing like an actual tasting, and she would because I'm with my parents. She's like, of course you can have some sips or whatever. They bought a case of the blackberry wine, and I fell in love with it. It is my favorite wine of all time, which is kind of weird that, they're all families. They've been there for fucking generations, but it was like fun. Oh, he's from the Belmead Plantation. Randall passed away in 1843, leaving the mansion and the farm to his son, John. In December of 1848, John then married his cousin, Carrie Winder. Yes, I said cousin. The couple had 5 children together, but only 2 of them survived until adulthood. Upon the marriage, they started to renovate the home, preferring a more fashionable style, which was the Greek Revival. Right before the Civil War, John's net worth was around $339,000 in 1860, which is $12.8 million today. They were rich. But it was also generational because he didn't start that at all. Not at all. When the Civil War started, John was 46 years old and he was too old to enlist, but he did help outfit and organize groups of Southern soldiers. Carrie, his wife, would sew uniforms for relatives and for friends. When the war was getting closer to home, he sent most of his slaves to Louisiana so they wouldn't be taken by the federal authorities. When the Union took control of Middle Tennessee, they learned that the McGavics aided the South, so they took thousands of dollars worth of grain, horses, cattle, and timber from their plantation. Like, you're helping them, you're gonna help us now. It was just petty, but you know what? They got money. Like, they're fine. On November 30th, the Carnton Plantation became the largest temporary field hospital for the Battle of Franklin. The home is 1 mile south of the battle, so they weren't involved in any of that, but they became the biggest hospital in the area. At one point, there were 4 Confederate generals' bodies that were laid out side by side. Obviously, they were not there anymore, but they were just side by side for hours. Patrick Clayburn, John Adams, Otho F. Strahl, and Hiram B. Granberry. And they were deceased. They tended to over 300 soldiers inside the mansion alone, and at least 150 unalived within the first night. Hundreds were spread throughout the property, on the lands, including the slave cabins. Carrie donated food, clothing, and supplies to care for the wounded. People recalled her dress being blood-soaked at the bottom. Carrie's 2 children, Hattie, who was 9 years old, and Winder, who was 7, witnessed everything, and they actually assisted in basic tasks to help take care of these men. As I mentioned before, there's about 2,500 unalived soldiers who were left to be buried by the town's citizens. To put in, just in my head, that is half of my hometown. My hometown is not even over 5,000 people. And horses. So they tried to bury the bodies by what state they were from and where their bodies had fallen, where they perished. In the nicest way that I can say that. They were trying to be as organized as possible. These men were from all over, and these were the Confederate soldiers that they were now dealing with. So they used wood headboards at each grave with a name, a company, and a regiment if they could find their information. Over 18 months, many of these markers were either rotting or used for firewood, and the writing on the boards were disappearing. Another issue were the shallow graves. There's a reason why we bury bodies 6 feet deep. Because they rise. And horses. Just the fact that they had to deal with the horse. Did they bury the horses? Did they burn? I don't know what they did with the horses. As you can imagine, all over town, in your gardens, all over, it's like a fucking living nightmare. I'm sorry for cussing, but that would be horrific. Absolutely horrific. So the ground moves, bodies decay, and they were rising. 2,500 bodies all over. I just can't even imagine the smell. So the McGavics donated 2 acres near their home as a designated area for the Confederates deceased. The citizens raised the funding themselves, no help from the government, ever, and the soldiers were exhumed and reburied for the sum of $5 per soldier. A team was then put together by George Cuppet to move the bodies. 1,481 soldiers and 1 civilian who ended up being George's brother, who passed away during this, and he was buried as well. Everyone was reburied in the spring of 1866, which is 1.5 years after the Battle of Franklin. The original names and identities of the soldiers were recorded in a cemetery record book kept by Cuppet, and the book fell into watchful hands of Carrie. For the rest of her life, Carrie McGavick kept watch over the cemetery and kept track of the identity of those buried in it. She would develop a nickname, the Widow of the South. The family continued to farm Carnton under sharecropping arrangements with former slaves until Mr. McGavick passed away in 1893. Carrie took over the farm and the maintenance of the cemetery with 41 African Americans until her death in 1905. There's so much information, so much more details and information about these people when you take the tour. I did not put this research into here because I would love for people to take tours of these properties. They're not that expensive at all. And you get so many more stories and you get to see the cemetery book. There's so much. And there was something about her children, and I don't remember the specific story. Please go take a tour to just see everything, hear the story. There's so much more that I'm not even saying. So let's continue talking about the property, who owns it, and all this stuff. McGavick's son Winder, who I believe was 7 during the Battle of Franklin, he ended up inheriting the home, but then shortly died 2 years later in 1907. His widow and children decided to move into Franklin. In 1909, the eastern kitchen wing of the house was destroyed by a tornado, and the roof line can still be clearly seen where it was hit. And we were out there, and I was wondering, oh, you can clearly see that this part of the house was damaged, but I didn't remember. No memory. Winder's widow sold the home in 1911, ending a century of family ownership. The mansion has then been passed down by many, many, many owners until the late 1960s and 70s. The home fell into disrepair. In 1977, the Carnton Association was formed to raise money to buy, restore, and maintain the mansion. The following year, the house and 10 acres were given to the association by Dr. and Mrs. W.D. Sugg, who had owned the property since the 1950s, which that's so nice. The association also acquired an additional 38 acres, and they began their work to restore the property, which was completed in the late 1990s. This took a hot minute, maybe a couple of decades. Today you can see the restored home, the property, the beautiful garden, the blood-soaked wood floors, which were once covered by carpet. They removed the carpet, and all of the original wood floors are still there to this day. And that's what, I don't know if I just blocked that part out of my memory, because it's a lot. And it's just very surreal to see that and just know that this happened 160 years ago. And it's just I don't know the feeling. It just grief, just sad. It's just sad, you just can't imagine it. Some short facts I didn't really know where to place in the story, but here we go. Civil War ended on April 9th, 1865. The Battle of Franklin happened 5 months before, but no one knew at the time that the Battle of Franklin would literally lead to the end of the war because of that battle, because the Confederates lost so bad, not just once, but twice. I don't know what happens in Nashville. I don't know what happens after that. I don't know what happens before that either. I only know about this one battle. But things were so unclear until after this battle that they could finally see the light at the end of the tunnel, and that is that this 4-year war was finally ending. Another fact is there have been several bills at congressional level throughout the years trying to save as much battlefield as possible. This has been incredibly super hard, of course, and they are still fighting today. But after the battle happened, people just wanted to move on, which 100% get, I understand. They just wanted to build their homes, they wanted to build their businesses, they just wanted to get away from this nightmare. In the mid-2000s, residents of Franklin decided that they wanted to reclaim that ground. More than $19 million in private donations have gone towards buying back lots. The city of Franklin now owns the Carter Hill Battlefield Park, which is about 20 acres of land that spans across the Columbia Avenue, which is where the Battle of Franklin happened. And they're still trying to obtain more. Also, I have this random note: 11 men received medals of honor as a result of their actions during the Battle of Franklin. Hopefully the guy who disobeyed orders. Now it is time for the hauntings. I wish we could have taken any of the haunted tours. There are many in the city of Franklin for obvious reasons. So much happens here, and I wish we had time. It was literally the last day that we were in Tennessee. We had to leave the Airbnb the next day, and we were there all day. We were exhausted. Oh my god. Okay, so I'm gonna have to go back to Franklin a third time, at least just for the ghost. So this house is actually listed as the second most terrifying place in America by the Travel Channel. The only thing listed on their website is about a crying woman, a little girl, and moving items. So I had to do some digging to try to find more stories, and I found some stories. Oh my god. I went to usghostadventures.com. Visitors have reported hearing a warlike drum sound coming from outside the home, assuming that it's the reenactors, because there were reenactors sitting outside. Here's my photo. There were reenactors sitting outside, which I'm like, what are y'all doing? They were just kind of hanging out. People were thinking they were the reenactors, but they did not make any noise outside. You could talk to them and ask them questions, but they did not make any noises like that when I was there. Most of the time, it isn't. Some have heard the drums coming from inside the home. Have you seen the movie Jumanji? Because it's kind of giving that vibe, but scary. I'm also recording this, and it's 11:42 at night, but I have my cat here, so it's okay. A staff member has said that she was there alone, passing by the staircase. I'm going to take my cat off the cat tower. She saw a woman standing at the top of the stairs, and she faced the staff member and shouted, "Where is Anne?" The staff member was going to tell her that there wasn't an Anne there, but before she could, the spirit disappeared. People hear disembodied voices, yells of men coming from outside the home, and these yells happen at all hours of the day. You see shadows and semi-sheer apparitions of men in Civil War uniform. There are reenactor people who are physical beings. They are actual people there. Just a warning. But apparitions. People see apparitions. Another website describes how people hear a woman crying for a loved one and a little girl staring out the window. There's an episode of Haunted Live that was on the Travel Channel where they investigated the Lotz House live and aired it on October 5th, 2018. I've never heard of Haunted Live, but also we didn't have cable. So the company called Franklin on Foot partners with the Lotz House to offer Friday evening ghost tours, and they told the Travel Channel where to try to investigate, and the spirits were like, nah, no, like, girl, we already have enough trauma, leave us alone. Like, leave us alone. Literally, we're gonna cause havoc. You wanna bet? Bet. But one of the people from Franklin on Foot has a bit of a story, and I'm going to read that here for you. So on Saturday, August 11th, 2018, he had a normal tour the night previous. Early the next morning, he gets a call from the museum manager, Thomas Cartwright, and told him that when he opened, many of the items were out of place. A bowl of mini balls and shell fragments were somehow moved from their usual spots on the ticket counter to the floor. Not spilled, moved, which that's just like creepier. Upstairs, both whiskey bottles from the parlor had also moved, one to the hall and one to the sofa. A pipe moved tables. Everything was perfectly fine the night before, though. The next day, the manager calls around 1 p.m. and says it happened again. So a sign moved rooms, a basket of candy moved to the floor, a goo-goo cluster dropped from its perch, and upstairs they found a heavy tea set ready to be served on the floor. Not where it's supposed to be. That's just like that's just eerie. Like, not tipped over, not like a mess. They moved them just like somebody picked it up and carried it somewhere else. But no one was there. It is too late to be doing this. Over the next 8 weeks, 6 of those days, the staff would open to find items all over the place. One of the times that really freaked them out was the mini balls spelling out the word no. On October 6th, nothing moved again. They had, however, figured out why this is happening. The start of the activity happened when they got the first call about the investigation happening. They did a partial filming in September and then a full day of investigation on October 5th by a bunch of investigators. The spirits hated everything about it. They just wanted to be left alone. They were not about this lifestyle. Like, we are not that type of ghost, okay? We're classy and we need to relive our traumas every single day, okay? Okay, this is where, like, the investigators went fucking crazy, and not in a good way. They pretended to amputate a leg to mimic what happened during the Civil War. If you want a trigger object, maybe don't bring back, like, really big trauma of that day. Like, maybe, like, small items. Maybe, like, you know, they're filled in a museum of objects that, like, found, like, bullets. There are pew-pews in there. There's so many things that you could have used as a trigger object, and you did that. What person would want to talk to you after, like, okay, like, let's say a person, like, gets injured by, like, a car accident or, like, dies from a car accident or something, and do you think the best way to communicate with them is to recreate a car accident or something, like, really traumatic? Were y'all using your brains that day? Like, what the fuck? They also investigated rooms that were not recommended by the tour group. They investigated the daughter's bedroom, the red room, which was, like, the ladies' parlor room upstairs, like, classy, and the family parlor. Now, this room isn't, like, massive. That's, like, a pretty big portion of the house, but they weren't really, like, active. In my personal opinion, I think they went way overboard with this. Like, you can have a calm investigation and still get activity. You can use small trigger objects like toys for children, or maybe like charcoal for the daughter, but like I don't know if like her ghost is in the house. I don't think so. I don't know. Woodworking for the father, and no one knows about the wife. I can't find any information about the wife at all. No one talks about her. Maybe just like a shell casing for like a soldier or something like that. But like also they're in a museum filled with trigger objects already there, and you want to pretend to amputate your leg to get a reaction out of them. You want a reaction. You don't want to have a conversation. Right? Let's respect the dead. So you can take haunted ghost tours of the house this fall. I believe they start in September. Okay, we're going to talk about my personal experience, and to be honest, I don't really have a lot of personal experiences in Franklin, Tennessee so far. I will be back. My personal experience, honestly, I felt really just like a homey vibe. It just felt comforting. Weird. I don't know why. I just like, this is just what I felt. So this is what I wrote. I just like listened to my gut, just like the feeling that I get. You can feel the love. Also, like it probably helped that like our tour guide was literally like the nicest, sweetest soul, and he was just so informative, and he truly loves this family, and I feel like he definitely contributed that feeling overall. But this is just like the gut feeling that I was getting. The children's room was sad, and they did have original shoes and toys. I know they were all fine. It's just a lot of trauma and a lot of sadness in the home, obviously. I'm really glad that the descendants of the Lotz family have donated original pieces and furniture to live once again in that house. The craftsmanship of the time is just so beautiful, and honestly, they should just all be in that house. And it's like, there's just so much care and detail into everything that he did, and like you can just see it. And like, I'm an interior designer, I understand that. I don't really, I've designed and handmade a chair, which is like elementary school level, like it's not great, but his like work is just so beautiful, and I'm glad that they're back at the home again. There is so many art pieces by the daughter inside of the home, and our tour guide was just so incredibly passionate, and he really just cares about the family and the home. He would drop interior design terms, and I'm an interior designer, and he actually like got everything correct, and he was a little hesitant. No, he's not an interior designer or anything like that. He's just like so happy to like learn about the styles and all this stuff, but he was correct. I'm like, he's got that. He was very good. He made the home feel like a home again. Also, my opinion about like what the ghosts are going through, I feel like outside it's a lot of ghosts that are trapped in like loops they just don't know, and like it's just sad when that happens. I feel like it does happen inside of the home. I don't think anyone knows who the woman is or who this child is. I'm not sure. Maybe it's just like the energy of the children witnessing everything. Maybe it's something like that. Like energies can stay, just manifest into something else. But they're definitely intelligent enough to give consent, like, hey, I'm not going to perform to you on live TV, but I will fuck around with you so you know to never fucking do this again, okay? So I feel like it's a combination of like intelligence, people are stuck in loops, maybe they can get out of the loops, I don't know. It's just a lot of energy, a lot of trauma, and like, I wish we could help them. Next, we are going to be talking about the Carter house. So Todd and Annie are said to be the two main ghosts there, which are the two Carter children. Todd is the one who ended up passing away inside of the home. Annie is a daughter. So visitors report seeing the brother and sister running around the home, tugging at clothes, as well as hearing unexplained voices. Like, that's so cute. The Carter family just like makes me want to cry. There is a statue that has been seen jumping up and down as well. I don't know what statue. I don't know where they're talking about. But there's a statue that likes to jump. Okay, so Annie's history. She didn't die until 1901. And she was 26 years old when the Battle of Franklin happened. So I don't even think like she lived in the house when the Battle of Franklin happened. Don't quote me. But I believe with the Lotz family, some of their like older children had already been moved out of the house when this happened. I think maybe that was with the Carter family. Some of the kids did not even live in the house. Like, they were all grown up. So she was 26 years old when the Battle of Franklin happened. Her full name when she passed was Annie Vick Carter McKinney Baltwischweiler. Annie Vick Carter McKinney Baltwischweiler. Yes. I found this information on findagrave.com, so I will read this straight from the website so we can get to know her, because people don't talk about women. So her first husband, Aaron McKinney, died 3 months after they married during a visit to his sister's house in Mississippi. Have I read this? I don't think I've ever actually read this. I just copied and pasted it. Okay. During the Civil War Battle of Franklin, she was there. Okay. So during the Civil War Battle of Franklin, she took refuge with her family in the Carter house basement, only to learn that after the battle that her brother Todd Carter had been mortally wounded. He was initially carried from the battlefield to the Chase Lounge in her room. The next day, as she was helping care for the injured on the battlefield, she met a Union soldier cartographer, is that how you say it? Who was making sketches of the ruined cotton gin house. Being artistically talented herself, they struck up an acquaintance. Frank Baltwischweiler was mustered out of the U.S. Army in Nashville in October 1865, and they married a year later. They went to New Orleans, where Frank tried to survive as an artist. Penury? Oh my god, that scared me. Why is it that voice? Penury. So they were living in penury, poverty, when their first child, a daughter, was born and died. Annie's father, Fountain Branch Carter, sent money so that they could move back to Tennessee. Also, Fountain as a first name is bold. I heard noises. It's bold. It's bold. It's bold. Their next child, named Frank after his father, only lived 9 days. He is buried between his grandparents, Fountain and Polly Carter, in the Old City Cemetery in Franklin, Tennessee. Their next child, Bernard, died when he was 13 while working as a messenger boy for Nashville American newspaper. He fell down a stairwell, crushed his arms and skull, and died. Do I want to keep reading? Jesus. Okay. Husband Frank contracted meningitis and sought treatment at the Federal Soldiers' Home in Dayton, Ohio, where he died in 1897 and survived him by 3 years, dying in Tryon, Tennessee. The family believes she was buried in the Tryon Methodist Church Cemetery, but a grave marker for her does not exist. Interestingly, there is an entry for Anne Baltwischweiler and a published guide to the Old City Cemetery in Franklin. So this is my opinion on the ghosts without actually ghost hunting or any other information, but this is just my opinion. I think she never got over losing her brother, and maybe they're kids again in the afterlife. And they're playing like the good old days. I don't know why, just like imagining that and just like, we're not gonna cry. We're not gonna cry. I haven't yet. I would like to think that that's what happened. I don't know for sure. Obviously, I've never investigated the place. This is not confirmed. I just think it's my opinion, and I think it would be really sweet if like they could kind of like choose their age and like relive their childhood and just have happy memories back there and get to mess with guests every now and then. So people's personal entries. So this is from TennesseeHauntedHouses.com. One person wrote that they felt an overwhelming heaviness in the air when they entered the upstairs bedroom. They got overwhelmed with sadness, nausea, heart pounding. They left the room and then they felt better. Another had no clue about the hauntings but suddenly felt sick as soon as they walked into the house. Their toddler began to get fussy in the parlor until they left to stand in the foyer. When they were in the foyer, which is like this like long hallway in between like the house, they heard a door lock click and move as if someone was trying to open up the door. When they went into the basement, that's where they just felt horribly sick, and they almost did get sick. They described it like there was just a lot of energy and it was just wearing them down. Another person was standing in the living room listening to the tour when their heart just started to pound faster and faster. They moved to the parlor and just felt a sadness. They walked outside and they felt completely back to normal. Then they went to the basement where the tour guide mentioned that Todd had passed away in the parlor, and the guests connected that they felt that energy, and it's definitely still there in the parlor. They didn't know anything about the history beforehand, and they just felt as if someone was just watching them from inside the home. My personal experience, again, just feelings. I didn't have any other ghost interactions. Of course, like, I knew these places were probably really haunted, but like, I just didn't see anything. Also, we were around a ton of people. My personal experience is that it just felt so heavy inside, especially the basement. It's like a creepy, no offense. It's okay. So when you walk in the basement, it's like a short entry. You go watch your head. You're in a stone basement. You know, it's not best, but they did what they could. The dining room is actually in the basement because it's a lot cooler. They got a table. They got some like furniture. They tried their best. The next room is like a cellar. They had like a couple of bags, like prop items. And then there's another room even deeper, and like the floor kind of like sags a little bit. And this is where they hid during the Franklin battle. And I believe they had like stocked up food. Like they dug up the center of the floor and put food in there because they didn't know how long this battle was going to happen, but like they did everything. That's why there's kind of like the little cave. I know the ceilings are low and there's just stone everywhere. That naturally will kind of like play with your emotions, but just like you just didn't feel good in that house. I don't think anyone did. And we were just at the Lotz House, and like I felt honestly like at home. Like I just felt homey presence, and inside of this house it just felt cold. Like there was such a drastic change. It felt cold. It didn't feel like a home anymore. It just felt dark. They had experienced a loss of a son, and you can feel that energy and that grief in that house 100%. One of the offices outside, I think it was like a farm office, they have all original. Everything is original. Just so many bullet holes in these walls. And I will stick a photo here. It is like wild to see. If any, like they didn't know if like anyone was standing in there or whatever. I believe it was completely empty. That was just weird and crazy to see. Just weird. Again, I've never been to war. I've never been in that situation. I just like, it's not something that like I can imagine. I didn't feel too uneasy in there. It was just very shocking to see. They do have a slave home that you can go in. Of course, every one of those that I go in, I just hate the feeling. I hate going inside of those. It's depressing. It pisses me off. And every single one of them, just hated it. That's how I felt in there. The tour guide was very knowledgeable, very, very knowledgeable. There were some Civil War buffs in there asking some questions, trying to trip him up. He's like, actually, no. Actually, this happened. Actually, no, you're wrong there. He's not afraid to, like, correct people. None of these tour guides are afraid to correct people. And, like, Civil War buffs are very huge. Next is the Carnton Plantation. Many have seen a spirit of a young girl with brown hair who was allegedly unalived on purpose before the war by potential soldier, potential suitor. She is commonly seen sweeping the floors at dusk and may sometimes be feeling a bit mischievous. They say the most active times are at dusk during October, of course. They say that the spirits really enjoy the autumn months, probably because the summer heat, they're hiding in the shade, they're hiding inside, but the autumn, they come out, they're like, yeah, Halloween. Sorry. At dusk during October, many people claim to see a ghost of a woman floating across the back porch. They see spirits of the fallen soldiers out in the surrounding fields. Some see a Confederate soldier pacing the front porch. The home's curator reported hearing noises coming from the back porch when she decided to go check it out, and she found 2 panes of glass taken from a shelf and propped it up against the back door. She believes it was the young spirit responsible for the redecorating. The head of the McGavick's family cook has been seen floating around the home, especially in the kitchen. Apparently, Seems like she's stuck in a loop fulfilling her duties, so you may hear some noises in the kitchen. If you see a floating head, just mind your business. Of course, there's a lady in white, and usually with haunted places, it's either a lady in white or a lady in black. And a website claims that Native American spirits have been reported in the bedrooms, the back porch, and the grounds. One story is a man who had an ancestor fight in the Franklin battle. He came after 5 p.m. and the mansion was closed for the day, so he walked around the area. He was on the path that leads back to the mansion, and he sees a silhouette of a man that he thought was going to get back on a horse, but then the horse disappears. Then he sees another man on the porch, and the living man asks, where did the horse go? The entity says horse was shot from under this other soldiers as his horse had been earlier. I don't know. The living man described the two entities as not physical beings, but ghostly ones. He chatted with them for a bit, talking about the battle. Many visitors have seen men moving around the grounds, sometimes with their horses. This article describes the ghosts as really just stuck living in the past every single day, which is just sad. I have a feeling they don't really know what year it is. I feel like they are truly stuck in a loop. I think every ghost at this place seems to just be stuck. I cannot imagine the amount of energy that this place actually has, just because you have all of the trauma. You have trauma from the children, the wife, everybody. You have now a cemetery on the grounds of a whole bunch of Confederate soldiers who are still there to this day, and I just have a feeling that they don't know where they are, and maybe they're trying to find their way back home. They're probably a long way from home, I'm assuming, and that's just sad. That's just very sad to me. No matter what side you're on, that's just sad. Okay, so now we're talking about my personal experience. I didn't really remember the story so much, but just seeing the blood on the wood floors just really fucking punches you in the heart. Just punches you, humbles you. Your heart just like sinks. It's just sad. Even though the mansion has some really awful stories, war or not, you can still feel the love in that home. You can still feel it. It didn't feel like I was unwanted in the house in any way, because I've had that feeling before in the Whaley house in San Diego. I had a feeling that like I was not welcome there. There is something very dark at the Whaley house, like just something like I was not supposed to be there anymore. Like it was time to go. Did not feel that at all in this house. You could still feel love in this house. This might make her cry. We're gonna try. The wife truly became The wife truly became all of their mothers at the end. That is the saddest sentence ever. She took care of those men no matter what side that they were on. Tennessee was really just like a mid-state. Like they were just kind of existing. She watched over the cemetery, took notes down. Anyone who called asking about a name, she would pull out her book and let them know if they were there. There are stories of people taking home their relatives or their friends. Some have decided to leave them there because they found their new home. She would be watching over them. The cemetery is very depressing, and if you know me, I hate cemeteries. I just don't want to mess with them. I don't want to be in there. I feel like I'm disturbing them. This is their resting place. Obviously, it's very depressing as fuck if you see it. I just saw it from like outside the gates. I like saw it. I'm like, I just don't like cemeteries. I don't like to go in them. I've always hated them. You just feel sad for them because like these are really young guys probably, and it was just a dumb war that did not need to happen, but the Confederates, the KKK, Yahtzees, all these types of people just want to keep going backwards and never progress and treat people like human fucking beings, and it just pisses you off, and it's very sad, and this war shouldn't happen in the first place, but you know, you got stupid people in charge of countries and wars and armies and shit, and people pay the consequences of rich white people's actions. So overall, I didn't have any ghost experiences other than just my gut feeling. Sometimes I can feel something off, like my heart is racing for no fucking reason, like that's happened before. The Whaley house is just one of those times where it just like hit me. Like, my heart was racing. I just had the feeling like I'm not welcome here. You need to leave. You need to leave right now. You need to leave. And my anxiety was just like, go, get out, get out. Like, I was not welcome there. And I felt it so strong in the Whaley house. That's why I want to go back and see if I still have that feeling. I don't know why, but like that house freaked me out. Like, I've been to the Ohio State Reformatory. I've seen Robert the Doll. I've been in a lot of haunted places. The Whaley house is the one that like really shook me, which was odd. I've never had that strong of a feeling like that ever since, but I do pay attention to how I feel in places because I am a baby witch, if you cannot tell. I have my little tools and altar behind me. I got bottle spills and all that stuff, and all the gadgets, tarot cards are right there. So energy can be created, especially with like paranormal and ghost hunting. That trauma, just like so much energy, just that can create an energy. It doesn't have to be the ghost itself. That could kind of maybe explain like loops. Could just be the energy stuck in that, because that's just crazy amount of trauma and crazy amount of energy. Maybe that's it. Maybe the ghosts literally are just stuck. They can't move past it because it was just so traumatic. But you do know that, you know, we can play with energy. We can manipulate it. Hopefully that can lead more into ghost hunting and talking with these spirits, and hopefully they can share their story and they can talk about it. Kind of like a therapy set. Like, let's talk about it. Let's process your emotions and hopefully like get you out of here. Like, you don't need to be stuck here. Okay, moving on to Franklin, the city, because you know the whole entire city is haunted as well, because everything. So there is a book if you are interested in reading it. It's called The Southern Ghost Stories, Franklin, Tennessee, by Alan Searcy. I will put his name on the screen, where he has compiled a bunch of these ghost stories from Franklin, Tennessee. So he describes that every building in town has a story. There are shadows, things are moving around, jumping off of shelves. There have been also so many deadly fires that have happened before. Fire codes were in effect in 1935. It's not just the Civil War happened here. There's a lot of other shit that also happened here, and like crimes and like other stuff as well. And also during the time, every single building in this city, town, became a hospital. So there's simply just death all over the city. There is a historic white building that is home to many businesses like Starbucks, which is apparently a hotspot for spirits. You want some coffee served with ghosts. The author actually had an experience there. So he was downstairs and he plays a song from his phone to kind of trigger the ghost, called The Battle Hymn of the Republic. And everything goes crazy. Everything. All of the lights turn on. Then he goes upstairs and tests it again. And the same thing happened. Everything goes crazy. Lights are turning on. So a lady in their group asked for a name and they heard Drake, which that's interesting. So the author goes home to investigate and he finds out Thomas Jefferson Drake was a drummer in the 10th Ohio and he probably died in that building, which, hey, I'm a band kid too. I play the trumpet. One story was at the courthouse. A deputy says that he was at the courthouse where they were having a hearing. So there's a guy in the holding cell behind the judge's chambers. All of a sudden, he just hears screaming. The deputy goes to the cell and says, "Calm down." He says there's a guy with a beard and told the deputy to get out. The bearded guy had a cigar, blew smoke into the deputy's face, and he disappeared. There's a socialite who died in 1879 and loves to haunt the area and enjoy herself. You go, girl. There's a Revolutionary War hero who has been seen pacing where his home once was, which that's sad. Like, what if her home's not even there? I have this written down, so I think maybe people can hear the activity, but it says echoes of an unalive, like plan pew pew, or it was an unalive yourself on purpose kind of a situation. All I wrote was echo, so I think like the activity, like people hear it, and that terrifies the local employees of today's businesses. That's awful. What if something was really happening? Get cameras out there. And there are Franklin walking ghost tours around the city, so you can take more, and I'm sure you can hear more in-depth detail about these places and actually see them. There is a haunted house. There are probably a lot of haunted houses in Franklin, but there is a haunted house specifically called the Howarth House. Howarth House? I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Howarth. TH house. Also known as the Cherry Manor. That is like such a classy name. The Cherry Manor. Ugh, I want that. Barbie's dream house, but haunted. The walking tours have said that this house is the most active on their tours. It can affect people physically. The tour guides do not like standing on the porch, especially if they do not have to go inside. They are like, nope, I will tell the story from a distance. You good? There it is. So this house was, of course, a hospital during the Civil War. It turned into a nursing home. That's morbid. Classrooms for a local college. The original wood floors on the first floor were actually replaced because soldiers would ride their horses inside and they destroyed it. Why did they do that? I don't know. So the owner knows that people talk about the house and its reputation. Tour guides won't even stop there, or they won't even step on the porch. People will not park their cars in front of this house. I don't know why, but the owner herself said she probably wouldn't ever live there, but she does get a kick out of the stories. Can I be your friend? She does believe the home is haunted by what people have experienced there. There's a ghost there called Margaret Peggy Eaton, who had a reputation back then of being a hussy and a bit outspoken for the time. Can I also be your friend? She was a model on a cigarette carton. Like, girl. Different. One of the previous owners said that he woke up in the middle of the night by a cold blast of air and saw a misty image above him that appeared to be a woman. He ran out of the bed and ran out of the house. His children saw Peggy standing at the top of the staircase. She only appears to men and mainly upstairs. Another guy was working late and his office was downstairs. He said that the chandelier would rattle like somebody was walking across the floor above him, but he was there alone. Another man who rented a few offices had a view of the bottom of the stairs from his desk. He saw a man dressed in military clothes walking around and just headed up the stairs, minding his own business. Like, okay, but also, like, how many reenactors are there? Like, if I was a reenactor, I would kind of fuck with people, but that's just me. Women didn't serve. Sorry. Music is also very popular with the ghosts in this house as well. Twice on 2 different occasions, music has played in a room where there's no one in it, and it's playing super loud, and that is fucking scary. That's it. Please subscribe if you would like to see more, or go check out my Haunted Places playlist if you would like to see all the other places that I have personally been to. This is just something that I like to do every time I visit a haunted place, and I am back. Like, I got a whole list of places that I haven't even talked about yet. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Have a happy spooky season.